Most mornings of the week, I'm in the habit of getting up at around 6:30 and going for a walk for 45 or 50 minutes. As I come out of our front gate, I have two choices of direction, left or right, obviously. One leads straight downhill through an avenue of eucalypts before emerging at a crossroad bordered on three sides by vineyards and on the fourth by an olive grove. The other leads uphill at first, just for a short way, and then winds gradually down again and around through more eucalypts, a sharp left bend, and then down a reasonably steep incline to level out again between a vineyard and an open paddock. Thus, whichever way I go, the return walk involves an upward climb. There is a downside, if you'll pardon the expression, to living on a hill. The early risers among you will be aware that sunrise at this time of the year is around 7:15, so that I start my morning walks in the dark, or rather in the grey light of dawn. And so, a couple of weeks ago, I was making my way down our drive in the half-light. The brim of the hill across the valley to the east was beginning to betray a faint glimmer, but the trees and shrubs flanking the path were still little more than shadows. As I approached the gate, I became aware that some 30 metres or so ahead of me, two or three of the shadows were starting to move. I stopped and watched and listened. 3 kangaroos, barely discernible, startled by my presence, silently loped off down the slope to my left and were lost among the trees further down. Of an evening, Janet and I often sit on our veranda, a glass of red in hand, one of the joys of living in the Clare Valley, watching the setting sun paint the eucalypts and the wattles ever-changing tints of yellow and gold. As the sun dips behind the hill to our west and the light begins to fade, we often hear the high piercing whistles of our resident flock of white-winged choughs. You heard all about those just now, as they come whiffling through the trees. Oops. Thank you. They alight and then perambulate down the hill. They're quite amazing to watch, these birds. There's a flock of about 9 or 10 of them, and they move down the hill rather like the peloton in the Tour de France. And they sort of peck, and now and then they get together and chatter. And occasionally you get a rival group which will come and challenge them, and so you'll get a standoff, a bit like the scene in West Side Story, for those of you who remember the rumble scene in that film. And so they're obviously quite territorial, and not only that, the magpies then also have a hand in the whole show. The magpies don't tolerate the choughs at all, so it's quite interesting to watch. Or sometimes we get flights of rosellas who will arrive and compete for space around the water bowl that we leave out for them. And at night, of course, you can hear the mopoke calling from a distant tree, while the southern cross and the saucepan wheel and blaze overhead. The bush, or in our case, the scrub, is full of sound and movement. Even when the rain comes in or the trees loom through the mist, which often cloaks our scrub at this time of the year, there is a friendly reassurance that we are part of the cycle of the seasons in our timeless land. In the words of Banjo Patterson, envying the life of Clancy of the Overflow, and the bush has friends to meet him, and their kindly voices greet him, in the murmur of the breezes and the river on its bars, and he sees the vision splendid of the sunlit plains extended, and at night the wondrous glory of the everlasting stars. And so, while we have to drive a few kilometres to witness the vision splendid of sunlit plains, we do experience the beauty of the hills and the valleys from our own doorstep. I offer these glimpses of some of our experiences as at least part of the reason for us taking the rather drastic step as a mature couple, although you might wish to debate that point, of selling up our home in Norwood, buying land in the Clare Valley and building a new house. After all, we'd been part of the Norwood community for some 35 years. We'd raised our 2 girls here. We'd joined this congregation when they were quite small, and we've become quite involved, as many of you all know. We're also part of the wider Norwood community. Janet was on the Community Development Board for a time, and I was the founding secretary of the Kensington and Norwood Historical Society, which that was 30 years ago, I hesitate to tell you. and later for a time an elected member of the Kensington and Norwood Council, as it then was. We love Norwood and the village atmosphere and the friends we've made here. Thus, some would doubt our sanity for making our move. Others probably would envy us. Pretty gutsy were the words our architect used in commenting on our project. The house we've had built is reasonably conventional in some senses and unconventional in others. While not claiming to be experts in passive energy or sustainable housing, we would see it as one model for housing in southern Australia, taking into account the climate, the latitude, the environment and energy considerations. Without following Henry David Thoreau into taking up a simple wilderness existence and returning completely to nature, nevertheless, we have tried to strike a reasonable balance between a degree of self-sufficiency, certainly with regard to power and energy and water, while maintaining active membership of mainstream society. By no means have we opted out. In fact, I think in the current age it probably isn't really possible to follow Thoreau's example. You still have to pay your taxes and endure the vagaries of the bureaucracy of modern society, the government, the local council, and so on and so forth. Philosophically, we felt that if we were to build a house, it should have a minimal impact on the environment, be economical in its use of energy, and still be comfortable to live in, that is, warm in winter and as cool as possible in summer. In short, we've tried to take a responsive and responsible, not to say Unitarian approach, to tread as lightly as possible on the land in the design and construction of our house and the management of its surrounds. For many years we had been interested in the concept of passive energy and had collected a small library of books on the subject. The concepts we espouse are not new, as the dates of publication of some of these books will attest. We read about people who generate their own electricity using wind generators made from cut-down 44-gallon drums and bicycle dynamos. We read about others who used animal manure, piggy poo, as a source of methane gas for heating and cooling. We read about self-composting toilets and solar water heaters made from old car radiators, trombe walls and rock piles to heat and cool houses. Some people have built walls of glass flagons filled with water to retain the heat, all done cheaply from bits and pieces. All these developments or inventions are laudable and if properly designed and made will work. But there was a catch. I'm no mechanic or construction engineer. My expertise in such matters ends at the point of installing a tap on a water tank, and even then I had to resort to getting a local plumber to do whatever he did to stop the water weeping out through the joint. So I'm not an expert in these matters at all.